Right, go, go, go.
All right, let's just press the button. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sobriety Unleashed podcast. I'm Simon.
And I'm Ellen. And today we are talking about if alcohol holds you back from finding your true self. Simon, what is our true self?
That is the big question. Definitely when I was drinking, I didn't even know or even think about my true self. And I think I had so many different personas that showed up in different situations, different behaviors, places, that I was so far away from knowing. And I think the true self is, for me, finding that part of you that knows what you want in your life, is moving towards a place of fulfillment, knows where to set boundaries. I suppose, in a nutshell, understands yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. When you're drinking, this was something that I had never, ever considered. And lots of people that I work with have never considered what their true self is. I think that's the exciting thing with sobriety, is it suddenly opens you up to the idea of what is my true self. And for me, one of the things that led me to kind of long-term sobriety was realizing that alcohol had become my whole identity. That was a great fear around giving up alcohol, was I wouldn't know who I was going to be. And I didn't think other people would kind of accept me as who I was sober, because I was just Ellen, the drinker, party girl. So finding my true self was quite scary, but it was also, I realized that I was so boring, and that wasn't the person when I was a teenager. I hadn't become the person that I thought I was going to be. So it was time to do something and change that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some people, I think it can seem a bit scary, actually, finding out who I really am, who is the true version of me. And many people come into, we talked about toxic shame before. Many people come into this with maybe sometimes a bit of a void within themselves, or a feeling of emptiness, where they sort of have a sense that in some way they're not good enough. So there can be a fear of removing these masks, the party girl mask, those different personas. I had a persona for work, a persona for going out drinking with friends, all these different ones that I didn't even know I was wearing them. But
no.
And I think when you're able to start removing those masks, which when you remove alcohol, you absolutely do, you sort of find yourself on an even keel, showing up as that same version.
Yeah, 100%. And you start showing up as somebody that is true to you. We talk about core values all the time, don't we? And this is really, if you are led by your core values in life, there is a sense of peace. And that, to me, finding my true self is somebody that I can be at peace with, in my own skin all the time, and identifying what are my core values and how do they lead me? What's the behavior that is linked to those core values? And if I'm behaving in that way, then great, I feel at peace with myself. No matter if the situation can be really hard, life can be really hard, but if I'm being led by those core values, and alcohol never let me do that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, exactly the same. And I have quite a few passions in my life. Obviously, I've got a passion for sobriety, but I also have a passion for writing, a passion for art. And when I was drinking, and actually it ties in almost to, within a matter of months of starting drinking as a teenager, to stopping doing the things that were my passion. And alcohol became my passion. And I actually think passion equals purpose. And when we have a sense of purpose in our life, that's what leads us towards a feeling of fulfillment, a feeling of wanting to get out of bed in the morning, something to look forward to. But when alcohol is your passion and your purpose, obviously it leads to a dark place.
Yeah, 100%. And it is funny, because I always say to people, the reason I got into coaching was I kind of manifested this life that I wanted. And as soon as it was connecting with you and finding out even what sobriety coaching was, I knew that this was my purpose, and I knew it lit a fire in me and that passion. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to share with the world. This is what I want to work on. I want to do something, have a sense of purpose that I never feel I want to retire from. I want to continue doing this for life.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened for me. And I think equally, nothing to do with finding your true self, but equally it keeps us both accountable.
It does, 100%. It's really, really, I said, I knew that this was the life that I wanted, but I knew if I didn't make it very kind of public and out there, not necessarily to the public, but even to family and friends, and identify myself as a sober person, as a non-drinker, there was a chance that I would kind of slip back. So yeah, putting it out there and being accountable and being a sobriety coach absolutely keeps me accountable to people.
And one thing I think that can happen, going back to true self, is I think a lot of people quit drinking, and that process of finding the true self can take a while. For me, the first year of being alcohol free, yes, it was like a honeymoon period, and I was doing lots of things and keeping busy, but I hadn't really come close to starting to look inward at who I really was. And it took a bit of time. And actually, do you really want to start looking at who you're, at the true self, in the first weeks and months after you quit? Probably not. No,
it is quite an uncomfortable place to be, isn't it? And I was exactly the same as you. It took me a good 9 months to a year to I was one of those smug sober people, like, yes, you just need to build a life, create a life that you don't want to escape from. But actually life doesn't work like that, does it? So suddenly being held to your core values, I started to do that work way later, 18 months, 2 years into sobriety. And that's something that keeps on developing over time.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like that second phase of the journey, I suppose.
It is. And it's a really important phase I keep on coming back to it, that there is the sobriety, the early days of sobriety, and then there's long-term sobriety, which is why I always find this industry of sobriety coaching a really dangerous place to be, because it can be unregulated, can't it? And there's lots of newly sober people out there. Well, actually, long-term sobriety is a completely different thing, and phase 2 of sobriety is really exciting. We see lots of people in our groups, don't we, that are suddenly ziplining. People who are listening will know who I'm talking about. Ziplining or paddleboarding, doing all these things that they would have never done when they were still drinking, because alcohol was our identity.
Yeah, exactly. It just, it formed my identity, as it did with you and so many other people.
Yeah.
But and I suppose that, there's another thing. It is about finding that true identity, coming back to like, who am I really?
Yeah.
And I remember I did some therapy about 18 months after I quit. And the start of that finding out about my true self was, first of all, he asked me an interesting question, like, who are you really? It's a very open question. And I sort of started saying, oh, well, I do this for an occupation, I'm this. And he's like, no, strip away all of that stuff. I don't want to know about material possessions, jobs. Who are you really? And it took me about a week to come up with an answer. And in fact, I still don't know if I've got it, but
I was going to say, Simon, who are you?
It's I think that sort of set me on that journey of then looking at how I became the adult that I am. What things in the past had shaped me, what experiences had turned into beliefs, how was that driving my behavior? And then it sort of snowballed. Once I started looking at that, I actually found it fascinating that certain things from my past could cause me to behave in a particular way. And obviously some of those behaviors I didn't like, and it was about acknowledging the darker parts of me and working on those and honoring the good stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And we have these beliefs, don't we, that we just don't even think to question. And I think there's a tipping point all of a sudden that you wake up. It's like you step out into the light and realize, actually, nothing fixes me. I am not fixed to be this person for the rest. This is just where I am. This is not who I am.
Yeah.
So how do I get forward and be the person that I want to be? And that can be in everything. It's not just sobriety, is it? It can be relationships and career, how you interact with people on a day, how you interact with yourself. Because alcohol, when you're not behaving in the way that you hold true to you wake up full of shame and regret and guilt. And that doesn't hold true. That's not your true self, is it? So when you start behaving in a way that is authentic and you start connecting with people on an authentic level, it boosts your self-esteem. It makes you feel better about yourself and going out into the world.
Yeah, totally that. And I think as well, you develop obviously self-awareness when you quit drinking. It just naturally comes. I don't actually think you need to do much work for it to arrive. It just turns up. And self-awareness obviously is like knowing how you feel in the moment, what emotions are with you, but also the ability, you develop the ability to self-reflect, where you're able to sort of almost critique your behavior and look back and say, actually, I felt like that, and that came from there, and this is why, what was, and really sort of, you start to ask yourself questions and assess yourself
all the time questioning. And this is something I always say to people. It's exciting. It's like, it's interesting to keep on questioning. Why did I react like that? What was the true reason? Was it just because so-and-so was late? Or how does that make me feel? And where does that come from? And who's told me that? And what experiences have I had to behave like that? It's very, very interesting. And interestingly as well, I go back to the mental health problems. There are certain mental health issues where that part of the brain that is constantly updating the self-awareness, it goes. So we do have this ability to numerous times throughout the day keep on updating our self-awareness and changing our behaviors to make sure we're staying true to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. I constantly kind of catch or question myself now, like when I was drinking and in the months that followed quitting, so much of my behavior was around getting the approval of other people. I would post things on Facebook, and it was ego driven. I would show off a bit to get approval. I didn't really realize I was doing it. And now I'm just so conscious of that behavior that sometimes I have to say to my friends, like if something good happens or I go somewhere, I sort of say to them, I'm consciously bragging about this. Just to say that I know it's a bit of a brag and I want to do it. So I'm doing it consciously.
I'm not looking for your approval. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a conscious brag.
Because when you're feeling like your authentic self, you're happy, you're at peace with that. You're not looking for that external validation all the time, are you?
No, exactly.
So what are the ways that we can find our true self, Simon?
I think one of the first things that helped me, as well as I mentioned about like looking at how you became the adult you are and what that sort of story of you looks like. And actually, one of the things that really helped me was making a timeline of my life, all the major events that had happened, some things that to an outsider might seem fairly minor, but to me, they still seem very vivid and, have all the hallmarks of trauma.
Yeah.
That timeline really helped me answer that question around how I ended up the way I ended up.
Yeah.
And then it was, we've talked about it before, but getting my values down on a piece of paper, looking at how my values lined up with my life, where I wasn't honoring my values, which values were not being met. That really helped me. Journaling, that was such a big part of being able to sort of just reflect on my sort of feelings and emotions and what was coming up for me sort of day to day. So yeah, there are a couple of things that kind of got me on that path, and reading lots of books around, they weren't to do with quitting booze. They were about understanding the self and how to sort of do that work. What about you?
Well, core values, I keep on going back to core values. There's such a huge thing. And they weren't only my core values. I started looking at the people who were around me and their core values and what attracted me to certain people and what turned me off other people. And when I'd removed the alcohol, it was really clear as day as to, what core values I really admired in certain people. And then starting to kind of have people that inspired me, or that I thought I really want to be around them. Why is it that I want to be around them? What is it that I really, I like? And realizing that nobody has anything particularly special. If people want to be honest, they just start out by being honest. It's kind of practice sometimes makes perfect. If it's not something that comes naturally, you can do these things just by starting to change slight tiny behaviors. But looking at people that I admired, working out what it was about them that I really liked and starting to behave like that.
Yeah. And then I think you kind of just make a commitment to yourself. Like I remember when somebody talked to me about integrity, and I didn't realize how often, and if you're listening or watching this live on YouTube, first of all, let us know that you're here. I can see a couple of comments already, and if you've got questions, ask away in the comments. But it was I hadn't even realized, like, ask yourself this question. That's what I was saying. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Like, how often do you say you're going to do something and then not actually do it, even just minor things. And I was catching myself all the time saying to somebody, oh yeah, I'll send you that book, I'll post a link to that, and then I wasn't following through on it. And they only seem little minor things, but once I made that commitment to myself that actually I want to be a person who has integrity, I was then becoming aware of it. Didn't mean I got it right every time, but I started catching myself and actually doing it.
And the consequences of turning up as someone with integrity, it makes you feel so much better about yourself, because there isn't that shame or that guilt linked to, I haven't followed through with what I said, because it's you're letting down ultimately, isn't it? It's kind of, other people might get a bit annoyed that they didn't receive that email, whatever, but it's you. And those feelings feed into your self-worth. As soon as you start showing up for yourself and showing up for everybody else, like you said you were going to, it makes you feel so much more kind of authentic.
Exactly.
And then the interactions that you start having with people, the relationships that you build when you start showing up as the true you, how has that changed for you in sobriety?
Yeah, that's changed dramatically, because I've found, a bit like you said around the people you're drawn towards, I've found myself drawn towards people who are interested in understanding themselves, people who are actually willing to talk about it, share their emotions, share their feelings, which actually, with some of my male friends, they can be quite hard to find. Like, I find women can open up a bit easier. I know I'm sort of stereotyping a bit, but
I'll forgive you. No, it's true.
In my experience.
And I mean, that is why suicide is the biggest killer in males under 40 in the UK, is because women, we tend to open up a lot easier. Men don't find it as easy, do they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was lucky enough to be part of a brilliant men's group where everybody made a commitment to be completely honest, to leave their egos at the door, to have integrity. And actually, in there, talking about integrity, if you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it, the group would call you out on it. There would be consequences. And it was such a great place to almost practice those skills.
And practice becomes permanent with it, as we always say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the big challenges I had, again, it's linked to my childhood, was around conflict, particularly conflict with men. And again, I learned that skill in there, to be able to say what I really felt and have a conflict with somebody, not a fisticuffs fight, but actually disagree. Well,
that's such an important skill that we are not really taught. We're either taught to really kind of fight a corner, and especially when alcohol is involved. That's in fact, we were at something a couple of weeks ago, and my son was sat there, who's 9, and we were looking at a girl that was drunk, and he said, drunk people, it's like their emotions can be just completely flicked with a switch, isn't it? I was like, wow, for a 9-year-old, you're really switched on, seeing that. And we, in conflict, definitely over emotional and not able to manage those emotions. So conflict resolution just doesn't really exist. Learning to do that in a healthy space is really important.
And there's a bit of a controversial topic that leads on from that, which is around talking about the true self. You know, somebody's had too much to drink and they say something that they later go on to regret. There's actually a story in the news about Mel Gibson making some anti-Semitic comments. I don't think Mel Gibson's listening today, so we should be fine. When he was really drunk. And scientists have looked at whether, when you're like, you hear people say, well, you know, you were drunk, you said that, you must have meant it. You know, I'm talking about this in the context of, well, actually, is that revealing a true part of the self, a dark part of the subconscious, that actually Mel Gibson holds some anti-Semitic views, and because he was drunk, he had no filter. And scientists have studied it, and there's conflicting thoughts about it. Some of them are very much, absolutely, that's what happens. There's no filter, you know, inhibitions are lowered, stuff comes out that normally when we're sober we just keep inside. And then others disagree. I don't know.
No, I don't know what the answer is with that. But also, of course, there's behaviors, risky behavior that we do. Cheating or kissing partners, other people's partners. Like, I've been there, done it, heard it all those kind of things. And but I was drunk. Is it an excuse? definitely no. Like, if you don't want to behave in a way that you don't hold true to yourself, then don't drink. There is no, for me, that's a very clear-cut line.
Yeah, and this is that piece I was talking about around Mel Gibson. The article was about, should he be held accountable, or is it okay to say I was drunk? It's an excuse.
Yeah, and where do we draw the line with that, though? I just think that line is so blurred. If somebody commits murder or rape or adultery, all those kind of things, then can we just not be held accountable because we've been drinking, which society allows us to drink? So therefore, who is accountable for it?
Exactly. I mean, you would think there's somebody who is prone to violent outbursts when they've been drinking actually has a lot of anger within them, and then when they drink, inhibitions are lowered, it all comes to the surface,
100%.
Which speaks to the true self.
It's such an interesting topic.
It really is. We haven't got many comments today for people.
That's because Ashley is in Hawaii.
She's our number one commenter on the podcast, isn't she? Right. Anyone else who's on, you're going to have to make up for it. So Linda's here. James is here, who says, well done for becoming your authentic selves. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So if you're watching, we stream every week live on YouTube. We're doing a meetup in September. So if you're listening or watching live and you want to come along, just drop an email over to info@besober.co.uk and we can give you all the details. And you're hosting a retreat in Bali, aren't you?
I am hosting a retreat, and it's a group of women who are non-drinkers or trying to not drink. There won't be alcohol involved, and doing lots of things. For me, sobriety is really exciting. Just traveling alone was something that I had never done. In fact, I was just talking to you before we came on air. In the last week alone, I've been to Paris twice. I've taken my girls up, and I went on my own yesterday to meet my cousin. And that is something that I would have never, ever had the confidence to do. And again, if I'd gone back when I was a teenager thinking about who I would be as an adult, I wanted to be someone that went off traveling by myself. So yes, just getting on the plane and going to Bali is a huge step for lots of people, and we're going to do loads of things there. It's all about stepping into your own kind of power, your own light. So it'll be great.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. I think even part of it is just that first step of committing to say, right, I'm going to do this. It can be fearful, new people, all the rest of it.
Absolutely. There was I live in the middle of nowhere, Simon, and we went up to see Ed Sheeran, and now I'm single. Not only am I going as a sober person, and I haven't been to a gig sober, actually, despite the fact it's been 3.5 years, that was a sober first for me, but also as a single mum going up there, it's another first. So there's loads of fear around it. Just getting an Uber for me is a huge thing, and being the sole responsible adult, like there's no other adult to help me with anything, and it was great. You overcome those fears and it boosts your self-confidence, and just it's a feeling of I can take on the world.
I agree. I mean, I've been to a few retreats over the years, and some of them just stick in my mind. You really learn, you have like these breakthrough moments, aha moments, and you make friends that are lifelong friends as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is most of the women I've already connected with in the sober community via Instagram, via your group, and we can't wait to meet up. And the same for the meetup in September. Anyone who's in the UK or in Europe can get over to the UK. It would be great to meet people in person. It's something. It's like a skill that we've forgotten because of COVID. I feel that actually just getting out there and meeting people face to face, we seem to have forgotten that. So actually doing that would be great.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant. Yeah, we're holding it in Hampshire, which is in the south of the UK. If you're in the UK, I'm sure you know where it is, but we've actually got a couple of people coming from the US, from Canada. It's awesome.
It will be fantastic.
Who else? Shelton said this is a very interesting topic, and Selena's on as well. And Shelton said this is very true. Sobriety brings responsibility.
It does. You have no excuses. You are showing up 100%. The interesting thing with that, I think, is that you can stop, and like we've just said, you can reflect on how you have responded to things. It might be that in the moment you haven't responded in a way that you wanted, but you can look in hindsight, right, what went on there, and going forward, how can I change that? I'm reading The Chimp Paradox at the moment. Anyone that hasn't read it, read it. It's fantastic. All about how we can respond in a better way with the rational human brain.
Yeah, it's so easy for that other part, that chimp brain, to take over, and quickly
100.
we
Yep.
spiral into a bad place.
Yeah, and I really, looking at my core values, like being rational and being level-headed is something that I hold very kind of true to myself, but alcohol didn't allow me to do that. um it I was kind of a hot-headed person who would react really quickly, and actually that's not somebody that I like to be around. I find that behavior quite threatening, and I don't like that energy, so I certainly didn't want to portray myself as someone like that. So taking a step back and every time saying, did I respond in a way that I am proud of, and if I didn't, what can I do to change it next time?
Yeah, and similarly, I think a big discovery I had about myself was I firmly believed, and I think a lot of people nod their heads when I say this. I know you've touched on it before. I very much thought I was an extroverted person when I was drinking. You mentioned party girl. That was the kind. I mean, not I wasn't a party girl. I was out partying.
A little bit.
Yeah, and I definitely sort of gave off this extroverted vibe, but as the months went by without alcohol, I just found myself being drawn to quite quiet, introverted activities.
Well, and you touched on like the ego and that external validation. I got a lot of that when Party Girl showed up. Oh,
Yeah,
Party Girl's here, she's really great fun. And so you well, I used to seek that external validation. Now it's only my opinion that really matters. If I know, I think that's where peace comes from. That if you're coming from a place of integrity and with true to your core values, you don't feel the need to explain yourself to anybody else. They can have a different version of events, but you're at peace with how you behave. So
yeah.
it's completely different.
I know a couple. I know you're on Instagram and I'm on Instagram, but I think for both of us, we can safely say it doesn't rule our life. But I know a few people who I think their self-worth becomes wrapped up in their social media. And I think a very good question to ask yourself around not just social media, any sort of behavior like you just described, going out partying, is like, how much of my self-worth depends upon this? If I don't go, is that going to impact my self-worth? And almost sort of, again, that comes back to self-awareness and self-reflection.
Yeah.
Is your self-worth getting wrapped up in external things?
Yeah, in likes and comments. And it's a strange place. And I talk about it with people who spend hours and hours and hours a day on Instagram. And I'm like, really? I spend 10 minutes a day on it. It just is not important it's important to connect with other people, but as you say, it doesn't rule your life. But social media, and that's the worrying thing for kind of teenagers, isn't it, coming up, where they find value and validation.
Yeah. Exactly. When I started out on Instagram and my YouTube channel, I definitely got a bit obsessed about, I need to get to 10,000 subscribers, followers, all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I kind of had a bit of an epiphany, and it was like, it doesn't matter. I enjoy the content.
Yeah,
no.
That's it. You have to stay true to you. You do. And especially things where all the algorithms start changing and they want you to do this and want you to do that. I messaged somebody the other day, I will never dance on Instagram because Instagram wants me to do that. It will push my stuff out. It is not true to me. I am not that person, and I will never be kind of a slave to what they want me to do.
Yeah, exactly. So true. And I find it quite sad, when you see people who've definitely got their self-worth wrapped up in it all, and it sort of defines who they are. And I think to myself, wow, if you didn't have that following, who would you be? Who are you really? It comes back to the question.
And it's not a real universe. It could close tomorrow. Like, what is true to you are the people that you surround yourself with, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and how you behave.
Exactly. We've got a question from Marty. How did you cope, adjust on your first sober holiday? What did you do? I take it Marty must have a holiday booked.
Yeah, God, I'm trying to remember even what was my first sober holiday. I think I took the kids to a tree house by myself, which was a huge thing. My then husband broke his ribs about 3 days before we went, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to take the kids by myself. And I took the 3 kids and we went hiking, and we had no proper toilet. And it was just a completely different holiday. It was something that, again, when I was a teenager, I would have thought that I would have done as an adult, and I had not done it in the 20 odd years as an adult. So it was really, really, I loved my sober holiday. What about you, Simon?
Yeah, they can definitely be challenging. There is a video on my YouTube channel that how to survive your first sober holiday. So it might be worth looking that up. My first sober holiday was actually a couple of weeks after I quit. I'd already booked it before I sort of made that final decision not to drink again. And it was with my mum and my son, and we went to Mallorca, one of those two. And I treated it like a kind of sobriety boot camp. I thought this is a great opportunity to read sobriety books, quit lit, to get into my journal, to really spend some good quality time, as well as enjoying the holiday. Sort of while I was sat around the pool, I was just reading and learning. And it absolutely helped me doing that. But I think from a more practical perspective, airports, they can be triggering. And I think it's about adopting a kind of an eye of curiosity rather than feeling like you're missing out. And when I walk through an airport at 6 a.m. and there's people drinking beer, it's curiosity, like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, I went to Paris. I took the train up on Tuesday, came back yesterday, and I had the day there. And not drinking is not difficult. When you identify as somebody who is a non-drinker, alcohol doesn't even, I promise people that as much as we talk about sobriety all the time, and it is important to stay connected, alcohol takes up like no room in my brain. I'm never thinking, I'm missing out on drinking. As you say, through a different eye, through a different lens. I was looking at people sat in the park overlooking the Louvre, and they're drinking their bottle of rosé at 10 a.m, and I'm like, oh my God, I would have been in bed for the rest of the afternoon. I wouldn't have been able to enjoy Paris. And it was 40 degrees there yesterday. It's easy. I'm around people who drink, and actually once your mindset has shifted and you truly are a non-drinker, I find it really easy to be around people that drink. In the beginning, totally. It can be a trigger, but once you've made that shift, it's easy.
It's funny you mentioned trains as well, because I remember a couple of clients I worked with had a real thing, a bit like Marty with the holiday, about going on trains and wanting to drink when they were on a train. And which makes me think about, we were talking about attachments, how much of my self-worth is attached to this. I think another question to ask yourself is, what have I attached to alcohol? Like for me, I never used to drink on trains. It wouldn't trigger me to drink, but for some people it would. And I think, in respect of Marty and his holiday and anyone else looking at the bigger picture of not drinking, what have you attached alcohol to? And I think if you can get to that, you can start then really looking at the things that can be trigger points and doing some work around it.
Yeah, 100%.
What did you attach alcohol to? Everything.
Everything. God, celebrating, stress, being a parent. Practically it was down the lake, at home. I was talking to a client about this the other day. It was that tipping point again. I don't know when it happened, that alcohol, first of all, was attached to a social thing, seeing friends, being out. When I was like 13, 14, it was, definitely that party scene. And then it was in the pub. And then all of a sudden it was just every night at home. It wasn't a social thing anymore. And it was easy to say I was a social drinker, but there was nothing social about my drinking in the end. I don't know when that happened.
Yeah, that's exactly my sort of path as well. Although when I was about 15, I would pinch my dad's wine and take it to my bedroom and drink it on my own. So I think there was something going on around.
I remember my parents used to put a bottle of cider in the freezer, and it would have those like flakes, almost like a slushy. And I remember being about 12 or 13 and glugging that in the kitchen on my own in secret. So there was always maybe a little issue there. And again, I never identified as an alcoholic. It had some kind of, it was like a magnet to me, really, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I think it's an easy escape and easy. Well, we know all of this stuff. We've talked about it before, haven't we?
Yeah.
James said, I found that sobriety enhanced my self-discovery.
Yeah, 100%. Self-discovery, self-worth, it boosts all of it.
What's that phrase? Discovery, not recovery, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Or I always think the first part is like recovery, isn't it? And then it steps into discovery.
Yeah, that's true. There is that initial period, I think, where it's just, you're digging your heels in, you're just allowing yourself to get where you want to be.
I think be kind, and then it is like, okay, now we can start to put ourselves back together, or put ourselves, it's not even back together sometimes, is it? It's just start to build ourselves anew.
Yeah, totally that. And Ian said he's on day 9.
Yay.
With a little fist pump as well.
Fist pump to you, Ian.
Good for you, Ian. That's awesome. Keep listening to the podcast and come along to the meetup in September. I think that's a really good way. If you've got something in the diary and you're going to meet myself, Ellen, and other people from the community face to face, that will really help. It will be a motivator.
Yeah, 100%.
So just pop over an email through the website or reach out on one of the social media channels that we never go on. Okay. All right. We'll wrap up there. We'll be back again next week, won't we? For another live
we will.
one. And we will see you all very soon.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.